Welcome once again to the Success for Life podcast. In this episode, we talk with Heather Havenwood, a tremendously successful serial entrepreneur. Started out in the mortgage industry, built a business there. When that market crashed, she then became an author, started a coaching business for helping people have success for life. She wrote a book on becoming an executive, how to build your business, on dating. Very interesting stuff. I think you really enjoyed my podcast here with Heather Havenwood. She's known as the Sexy Boss. This is Dave Schuman here with the Success for Life podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, Heather Havenwood. Very, very accomplished in multiple different fields. We have her on as a very special guest. We're going to explore what has taken her to be successful, and hopefully a lot of her ideas and thoughts will be able to be shared with you. Heather, thanks for coming on the Success for Life podcast.
Thank you, David. I'm excied to be here.
I wanted to start with just a little background on yourself for the listeners who haven't maybe met you before. Give me a little backdrop as to, not where you are right now, but a little bit about where you came from.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Houston, Texas. I'm a Southern girl through and through, to give you an idea of that. But honestly, I'm like a lot of people. I went to college like a good little girl, and then I got into corporate America and kind of rose the ranks and did very well in a very fast period of time, 4 years. And I was in sales, business to business sales. I think a lot of successful people start in sales. I was thrown a book. Here's your desk. Here's our business cards. Here's the yellow pages. See ya. And here's your quota. And if you don't make it, you're out. So I learned quickly sales. That's where I got my kind of teeth wet, basically, or sharpened in the corporate world, and I did very well in business to business sales. So that's where I got my start. But the turning point for me, David, and kind of why I'm here where I'm at, back in like '99, I was given my little award. Congratulations, you're top 1% in the country for sales, and then by the way, you're fired. And I was very confused. I'm like, whoa, wait, what? Because I was taught that you make money for a company, they give you part of that, and then you're happy, right? And you move on, we all love each other, and you're there for 20 years, and maybe you get your red staple in a box, right? And that's just kind of what I thought life was going to be. And so then I got fired, and I was very confused by that, and that was kind of the moment. And I actually saw an infomercial one day, and it said something along the lines of, do you want to control your life? Do you want to own your own business? And that was like, yes, because I just didn't want someone to take that success away from me again. I knew I'd be successful again, but I didn't want to go into another company and make that company successful again. How do I do it for me? And that's kind of how the journey started, just a long story short. So I've been in the direct response marketing world since that day, really, since that was 99. And I started in just traveling the country during direct sales in 2000, 2001, right after 9/11. And so I've been in the business ever since. And it's taken a few turns along the road. But really, I'm in the direct response marketing space.
Interesting, very interesting. I had a similar experience myself in business. I started actually in '98 and worked for a company and got my MBA after college and after playing football in college, and thought that corporate was going to be for me. And I quickly realized, and my turning point was actually 9/11, which really kind of completely shifted everything I did. But a lot of people were lost in the World Trade Center that actually worked with directly. But it was that was more of a wake up call. I was already thinking it was time to make that move, and it's interesting to hear. I was what they call the rainmaker in the technology field, and went into the big corporations, and I was young, and that was when a lot of young people were beginning to make their move in technology, and so they had to have some experts in there. So I really appreciate hearing that background.
You and I are similar there, definitely. I mean, I was in Texas at the time, but I was in technology, and I was young and moving and shaking, and what they call the dot-com bust, boom and all that. And I was like, this is great. Life is good. Yeah, so I completely relate to that. And then pretty much 9/11 happened. I got fired right before 9/11, and then 9/11 happened, and then I'm like, what do I do? So that's kind of when I saw the infomercial, and I went to the infomercial route.
What was the infomercial that you saw that I guess generated that spark?
Yeah, so here's what it's a funny story, so I'll share it because it really is funny. So I'm sitting here on my girlfriend's couch. I don't have a job. I'm not broke just because I had a little bit of savings, but I'm not like living in luxury. And I'm on her couch, and her new husband, literally on a Sunday, and he's like flipping channels, probably between football or something, and it lands on this infomercial, and he's ignoring it, right? And I'm like watching it intently, and it's like going on and on about, but I think they were selling how to buy and sell real estate notes, and I didn't care what it was. I didn't care. I just heard, do you want to own your life and you want to own your own, business? So I'm writing down the phone number and where to go the next day, 1:00 p.m. at a hotel down the street or whatever it was. So the next day I lied to my girlfriend. I said I was leaving town. I didn't. I stayed and I did this whole seminar. I went there and, it's a 90-minute presentation where you sit down and for 90 minutes and they pitch you, right, for 90 minutes. And I didn't care what it was. I was just a yes. I'm like, this sounds great. I'm like 24, by myself and a single there. And here's the catcher. So the guy says, okay, it's $3,000. Well, I didn't have that kind of money. I'm like, ooh. But then he says the magic words, but it's only $1,000 for your spouse. So I nudged the guy next to me. And boom, right then and there, I said to him, can I be your spouse? And he's like, what? I'm like, can I be your spouse? So yeah, we went to the back of the table and gave them a credit card for $1,000. And he looked at the guy and goes, this is my spouse, different last name, different address. So I went as his spouse, and a week later, they come back for 3 days, and we did the 3-day event. And it was how to buy and sell real estate notes. But here was a turning point. The people in the back of the room knew I was lying. They're like, okay, yeah, right, you're not the spouse. And they kept asking my situation, like, who are you? What's your deal? And they said, why don't you come work for us? So I moved to Orlando, Florida, and started working for that company. And that's where it got started. That's where I learned direct response marketing, not only did I learn how to buy and sell houses and buy and sell notes, because I started doing that on the side and building my own business, but at the same time, I started traveling the country and learning direct response marketing.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Can you explain to me direct response marketing, so I understand and all our podcast listeners understand?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's not a term that's used a lot, but it's what it's used every day on them. Okay, so if they ever bought a course online and they saw a video for 20-30 minutes, we call that a VSL, a video sales letter, and they listened to the video and then they bought the product. It could have been a supplement, it could have been a $7 report, it could have been a course for $1,000. They just entered into the direct response marketing world. So the person who put that up basically is created that entire sales funnel from a direct response marketing world, meaning they push something to you and ask you for a direct response. So all a lot of radio ads are direct response. It's kind of the art and science behind advertising. Okay, so when I was traveling the country, we would fly into a city like a Chicago or New York or Peoria, Illinois, or wherever, because I went to a different city every single week. I flew 50 weeks out of the year, and we would fly in and we'd sit in front of a group of people, 20, 40, 100, and we had 90 minutes to basically sell them a $3,000 package. You had to learn quickly the art and science of sales, know, like, and trust, persuasion, influence. Those are all the what I call the principles of marketing. Nowadays, we do that online. Nowadays, we send you to a website, you watch a video, okay? But it's very different when you're face-to-face and you see them walk out the room. You see them roll their eyes, right? You see them excited. You see them whatever. You see that in real time. And so you learn the art of sales, of what I call group selling, quickly. And if not, you don't eat. That's basically what happened. We one night we'd be eating ramen noodles, the next night we're eating like Ruth steak. So we really liked the Ruth steak over the ramen noodles. So we would really learn the art and science of direct response marketing, and it's used on us every day, but that's really the art behind it.
What did you learn from being in front of people and having to sell them? What are some of the things that you learned that were important in closing that sale that you had to learn? Obviously, since you had, if you didn't sell, you didn't make money, you didn't eat. What did you learn from making those sales and dealing with people face to face?
It's a great question. So what was happening was, just to give you an essence, there was like 3 groups going out, meaning we all went out every single week, And the top group, meaning they were making the highest percentage of sales, they got to go to places like New York and Chicago and Seattle and LA. Okay. And then I was in the C team when I started. I was in the crap team, basically. We were going to Peoria, Illinois and Cincinnati, Ohio or something,
Right.
and it's freezing. We're schlepping our stuff through snow. Like, it wasn't fun, And I thought, okay, how do we change this? And they're like, well, you're, the speaker, because I was helping, it was help staff and the speaker. So we're a big team. I said, how do we change this? I mean, well, we get James to get up to 20% closing ratio. Now, let me give you an example of this because this is really important. So we would go into a city, let's say Chicago, and the company would say, okay, look, we just dropped $250,000 in ad spend for you to be there, meaning radio, newspaper, and TV, okay? You guys need to, if you guys can make $1 over that, we love you, right? So you have to hit 12 to 15% closing ratio to be able to make that. And if you get higher than that, we even love you even more, right? So we're like, awesome. So we had some goals. Now let me explain to you what that means. What that means is you're sitting in front of strangers and you have 90 minutes to pitch them and to get them to go from stranger to hand you over a credit card for $3,000. And then you hand them back a piece of paper and they have to come back for their event in 2 weeks or 1 week, depending. Okay, that's a huge gap to go from stranger to give me $3,000. Right? In 90 minutes. So there's a lot of different art and science of persuasion, influence, environment, conversation. One thing I remember learning, this was just specific, and this is so true, guys, and people are like, I can't believe that this is just honest. When we went to New York, or New York area, right, northeast of the country, we had to have someone who talked a little faster, okay? If we took somebody there who was more southern and slower in their conversation, buying was down, okay? But if we had someone, we had this guy named Mark Gonzalez, he was like an Italian guy, looked right out of New York, right? If we took him down to Dallas or Houston, he'd bomb, right? Because the know, like, and building and trust factor was gone. Because it's like, oh, you're a New York Southern slicker, we don't want you here. Right, so that's something we learned. When we would go to Texas, and I'm from here, so I can say this, we would slow down our speaking. We're way more Southern. We're way more hospitable, right? Way more open. Slow down our conversation and answering questions or whatever. When we went to New York, I mean, people like, we want to know right now. It's very fast, and here's the deal. I don't want to sit there for 90 minutes. What's the deal? Is it 3,000, 4,000? I'm out of here. It was way different kind of selling. So you had to not only mirror match the different part of the country, but you also had to, what I call mirror matching, learn the person in front of you, what their style was. If you were really fast talking, the person in front of you wasn't, it's not going to be a positive experience for them, and therefore they're not going to purchase. If you mirror match them and you basically match their feeling, their energy, their behavior, it's going to be a better experience. You're going to have a higher closing ratio. So these are just small, tiny things you have to learn. You can't do that online. And you possibly could serve up a different ad based on the geographic location of the person, but you're guessing, right? So these are just small little nuances that I learned, and I could go on and on. I mean, I really learned the art and science of copywriting in that environment because it really was different. I mean, honestly, David, you learn the art and science of hearing no more than anything, and you learn the art and science of massive rejection. And there's a difference between rejection, someone leaving your website, versus rejection, looking at you going, you're full of crap, and I'm rolling my eyes at you, and I'm walking out. It's like, oh, that little stung a little bit harder. So you learn how to kind of have thick skin and understand that it's a process. Sales is a process, and persuasion, influence is a process. So I learned that piece, and now I take that online. Now I create sales funnels online, and I take all that data and information I learned about human beings online. Because at the end of the day, David, yes, things have altered since 2001. However, we as human beings on why we buy hasn't changed since Jesus' time. That's why you can open the Bible and read a story in Jesus' time, and it resonates for today because we as human beings have not altered, and how we buy, why we buy, and how we buy haven't changed. Now the techniques we buy differently, right? We don't maybe call a phone number, a 1-800 line, or maybe we don't, we write a check anymore to a mail. We now go online, but that's just a technique.
And
hasn't changed.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point, is that the psychology of what gets somebody to buy. In your experience, what are some of the things that you found from people motivate them to make that buy? What do you have? What kind of buttons do you have to push, or what kind of motivation you have to generate from them to become a buyer in your product?
It's a great question. So the first thing is a credibility conversation, right? Always know, like, and trust, and a credibility. That was the first one that we did when someone walks into our room, how we were dressed, how we would present ourselves, a credibility. Those things were created with what I call the initial 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, that's out of the way. Once that's established, like we're going to fulfill, we're not just, some company that hasn't been around for a while, kind of things like that. We know what we're doing, we have experts. Once that's out of the way, now we're into, well, what are you providing me? Here's the question people have. What are you providing me that's going to give me what I want in life? Now, here's where I talk to a lot of consultants and coaches all the time, and they're constantly saying, well, this is not working, no one's buying. The reason why people don't buy consulting and coaching sometimes is because the coach or consultant is trying to sell the tactic or the strategy, not the why. Here's the bottom line. Everyone buys things, coaching or information marketing products, or even a car, for one reason: freedom. Freedom. You're selling freedom. If you purchase this course and go through this course, you're going to learn to make money, which will give you freedom. If you purchase this car and it'll make you feel like you're free. It's always about freedom on some level. It could be, if I make money in this course or with this information, I'm going to be able to, give money to my kid who's about to go through college. I'm going to help him through college. That will make not only him happy, my wife happy, and it'll give me freedom. It's always about an emotion. It's never about the tactic. It's never about the strategy you're selling. It's always about the why. What is the why for them? And there's always something, right? There's always something. There's always something that they want a better life, or they want freedom from, or they want an experience of. And that's what you have to tap into on any level, on anything that you're selling. Right? Why do people buy, certain kind of supplements? Because they want to feel healthy, therefore they want to feel free. And it's always back to that.
How have you instructed, like, your coach? So you're coaching and working with people, and you've done seminars. How do you instruct people to be able to find out what that why is? Or what are some of the things that you do to find out what their specific why is? In some cases, obviously online, but even if you're on the phone or in person, how do you generate that, what their why is?
So, well, it's a great question, and I understand where you're coming from, David. It's a hard question to answer because for me, as the either salesperson or coach of them, I'm always trying to find it and listening for it. I'm listening for it, but that doesn't mean that they are aware of it. Okay? Because maybe they just have stress, like their wife's coming down and they're not making enough money, right? That they feel that. They feel the stress of it, or they have a dead-end job and they don't see where it's going. They feel frustrated. That's all they feel, that stress. They feel the stress, the frustration, or whatever of the thing, okay? And sometimes they can't see beyond that. So part of this is learning how to listen for, where's the freedom? If that was gone, how would that feel for you? Oh, that'd feel great. I'd be able to blah, 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 right? Okay, well, what would that be like? I mean, right? What would it be like if your wife was not nagging you about money? Oh my God, I could be awesome. I have sex with more, right? They're all excited, right? It's like, well, you'd have freedom, right? They don't always bring it back to freedom, but you as the either sales or coach are listening for what is that thing that was lifted that they would feel free again. And I know that sounds like it's, this is hard psychology, and I don't mean to go deep, but it really is. You ask the question. That's really what it's always about. It's about, I remember, think about this, David. I'm sitting here in front of this gentleman. I remember he was a great guy. And I'm selling a $12,000 course on real estate. 12 grand. It's a car. And the guy gives me his credit card. And I walk over and I put in 1200000, enter. And then it rings it up, a $12,000 credit card slip. And all I hand him is like a piece of paper. Now, of course, he had a ton of courses he purchased, right, and a ton of seminars with that package. And it was valid, and I know that he probably did very well with that. But I want you to understand why he purchased that. He purchased that because the possibility. The guy, I think, was like 40. He was late 40s, early 50s. He had a career in the Army. I mean, he had like a very, very successful career. He wasn't like, dumb or anything. And he was a great guy, very articulate. He wanted something more, and there was something else for him that he wanted. And so that's what people purchase, is that possibility. Why do people go to $60,000, $80,000 colleges? Why do they send their kids to Yale? Because there's a possibility of a better life, right? So when you're selling high-end courses like that, or consulting or coaching, you have to look for, what is it that I can provide that's going to give them the freedom they're going to purchase this.
That's really interesting. I think your approach.
Am I going too deep? I so apologize.
No, it's fantastic. That's
really. So.
That's what I like to do is dive deep to really understand. Obviously not just what has made you successful, but.
But David, that happened to you. I mean, you talked about 9/11, and
yep.
You really saw there was something else. So you're like, wait a minute. It was a wake-up call for you. But if you really looked at it, you're like, I need freedom from. I need freedom. There was something about you that you said. You didn't probably say in that way to yourself, but there's like there's something wrong here, and I need freedom from something, and that's where that movement happened for you.
There's absolutely no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And now, reading your bio, and I went online and
sure.
Looked at some of the books you've written. Quite a few books, yes, quite a few books. On Amazon that people could pick up, and now getting to understand the backdrop of everything, I now begin to understand how those different books that people might look at from the outside and say each one of these topics are completely different, but they're actually they're interrelated. So
they are.
Yeah, they are. So you have your book, The Sexy Boss, and Empowering Women, which incorporates sex, money, and success.
Yeah.
You have a book in helping divorced men get back into the dating game. Maybe before we even dive into some of that stuff, which I'm sure there's a lot of great stuff on that. Writing your first book.
Mm-hmm.
What was the motivation for writing your first book, and how'd you go about doing it?
So what was my first one? It was a dating one. So I just want to let you know, what I'm not good at is what I call opening up Word doc, looking at the cursor blinking at me, and there's this blankness. I completely go blank. I don't know about you, but I'm just like dead space in my head. My head just goes, duh. I don't know what to do. So what I did is my first book was The Dating Game. And I thought I need to get something out because I was going to that space. And the reason I went to that space because it was 2008-9. Recession was hitting, so I'm obviously no longer in the real estate market.
Right.
So I'm like, I can't do real estate. So 7/8 hitting. Everyone's like giving away their keys to the kingdom. Like here's 5 houses. I lived in Florida at the time, by the way. So
wow. Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I lived in Florida, and so yeah, I had friends who were like, yeah, I had like 12 houses. I just walked into the bank and gave them the keys and said, see ya. Like it just. Anyway, like I had some great friends. Like, oh yeah, whatever. So my house went through foreclosure and bankruptcy, but I was like, only one. Like I said, I had friends who were like 10 and 12 houses like that. So I was like, well, I can't go to the real estate space. So I went to the dating space because I learned that men will always want women, which is great. And it's a recession-proof business. And so what I did is I had a friend of mine who interviewed me like this, right over the phone. I recorded it. I gave him some questions to ask, kind of like a little bit of a steering the direction. But of course, he asked his own questions, which is what I wanted. He's a single guy, so that was a good thing. I was like telling him just to ask what you would ask, and he did. And we recorded it, and then I handed it over, the transcript, and somebody else to kind of clean it up and look pretty. Then I had somebody, create a cool art piece. I got, I think, on Fiverr, and boom, boom, there we go. So I'm a big proponent of speak it, and then transcribe it, and then edit it. So my book, Sexy Boss, I did that one in 90 days. And that one was bigger project because it was my life story. That one took a lot longer. I think a friend of mine, again, same thing, got on Skype, scheduled the time out, scheduled it, date, time, 3:00 on, and we scheduled it, gave him the questions to kind of start from. Good thing is he's a friend of mine. He knew me, so again, he knew how to pull things out of me. And I transcribed it, sent it over to a copywriter. He edited it in about 2 weeks, and I had that thing from nothing to complete in 90 days, including my audiobook. So
wow.
I'm a big component of not dragging books out. If you're going to do a book fast. Do not drag it out. It's the worst experience to drag out a book. Just like, boom, 90 days, boom, 60 days. And the best way to do it for me, at least, I'm a speaker, right? I'm really better at this kind of conversation versus throwing up a Word doc and just starting with scratch. I just can't do it. I've tried. I can't do it. So I'd rather say, hey, David, let's team up here. Would you be willing to do, 4 little interviews of 20 minutes each? And I hand you over these questions, the kind of direction I want the book to go. You ask me the questions, and then I transcribe it, and then I get an editor to kind of what I call move through the stuff and make it more sense. And then, boom, there you go.
That's really, really interesting. It's funny. Over the years, I've read many, many different people's takes on how to do a book, and I have to say it's the first time that I've heard someone with such a direct and quick approach.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
People always say,
I'm in the middle of my next one, and this time my other friend wasn't available, so I literally put it on Facebook. I'm like, hey, I'm looking to write a book. I need a friend. I need a friend to be my person. And someone's like, I'll do it. I was like, awesome. So we scheduled like 4 times that worked for him and me. We got on Skype just like this, recorded it or, whatever. And that was it, right? And then I'm getting it transcribed. Like the audio is transcribed from rev.com, super cheap. And now we're going through the editing process.
What was that site? Rev.com?
Yeah, rev.com. It's so cool. Rev.com is awesome. You can swipe any YouTube video. You have to own it. Swipe any YouTube video and send it to them, and they'll transcribe it and have a turnaround in 24 hours. It's awesome.
That is really, really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So you went in and you cover dating and you cover different avenues of being successful. What are the, I guess maybe some of the because I want to dive a little bit into, because I find it really, really interesting. What are the key similar components in being able to manage your sex life, manage money, and trying to become successful?
That's a good.
Is that good or
what? Wow, I don't know if I can answer that, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure that shit out myself. I'm sorry, I apologize. I said the word STHT. So here's what I would say about that and why that I went after the dating market. It's because, one, I told you it was a recession, but the other difference is sales is just like dating, okay? So it was an easy thing for me to help men specifically how to date and attract women in their life, especially after I go after the men who I call are older, meaning 40 to 60. And the reason I say that in a loving way, guys, is if you're 21, you think you are awesome and you get any chicks. So just like,
right.
That the men in their 40s are like, okay, maybe I don't have this whole thing down. You know what I mean? They're kind of in that, maybe I don't know everything about women stage. So they're more open to the conversation of like, maybe you don't know everything about women. But it's teaching them basically attraction, sales, persuasion, influence. Okay, and it's that dating is a sales process. So if you get on your first date and you look at the girl and you're in on it in 10 minutes and you're like, so you want to get married? She's gonna run out the coffee shop, right? So you don't do that. Well, people do that in sales all the time. So sit down with somebody after 10 minutes. Go, okay, do you want this $5,000 product? Whoa, right? So it's the same conversation of like teaching And I go after men specifically because it's a niche conversation. Women think differently and men think in processes. So it's easy for me to say, okay, men, think of it like a sales conversation, right? And, know, like, and trust, building the rapport, going into a conversation where you understand where they're at, they understand where you're at, and you can move, what I call move down the process. Because men understand processes, right? Oh, it's like a machine. It goes down the little wheelhouse right here. So it's easier for me to have that conversation with men versus women. Now, I've had women come up to me, no kidding, David. I was at an event where I was speaking, at 3 women at the same time, which can be kind of daunting. They came like as a group. They came at me and said, "We don't like you." I felt like I was back in high school. I'm like, wow, why do I feel like I'm about to get beat up? So I said, well, that's okay, because you're not my market. I'm here speaking about dating, like specifically at this event. So that's okay, you're not my market. I'm actually teaching men how to understand you. Okay. After the event was over, after I spoke, went to the bar and the girls were hanging out having a cocktail, and they said, okay, we like you now. We think you're amazing, because they understood that the more I can explain men that women are emotional, most of their conversations are emotional conversations, not logical conversations. That's why you guys have this look on your face like, well, what the hell did you just say? Makes no sense. Then they can, it helps all their relationships. And it's not just intimate relationships, David. I mean, a lot of men come to me and go, I have this boss who's a female. I don't understand. I don't know how to connect with, I don't know how to work with her. Or, my mom or my sister or my aunt or great aunt or whatever, like they really have a hard time, working with them. And nowadays they do have to work with women in a lot of different ways, not just at home. So they're working, maybe they have an assistant, or maybe they have a coworker who's a female. Maybe they have someone who's underneath them or equal to them or over them at work, and they don't know how to manage that. And that's what I work with them on.
That's really interesting. Now, going from real estate to dating, essentially, what has anyone ever said to you? Wow, you've completely changed. What your focus is. How were you an expert in this when you were an expert in that? What was that convincing process to getting customers to understand, potential customers to understand, this was the world I'm in, but this is a world I've lived in my whole life, or and this is why you should follow what I'm saying or understand what I'm saying.
Well, here's how that happened. I'll just, I'm just being honest, and you can read this online, so it's all public. But I was in real estate. You remember, this is in 2000. I was there 2001 all the way through 2006 in Florida. So I was teaching people how to buy and sell houses. Now, what happened is I got into business with a business partner. We went from $0 to $1 million in 2005-06, and it went very well. A few things happened. One, came home one day and came back to the office. Came home one day. He had pulled all the money out of the bank accounts, pulled all the accounts, and I went from very wealthy to broke literally overnight. So my business partner bolted with all the money, wow, and all the sites and everything, and I was broke, literally, overnight. So my house went to foreclosure right at the time when everything was hitting in Florida. So my house went upside down at the same time, and so I went from doing really well to broke. My house was upside down, and then it went to foreclosure, and then I had filed bankruptcy. So I was wiped out, right, in 2006 and 7. And starting in 2008, 2009, I was like, okay, I need to get back on the horse. But what I know is direct response marketing. And a friend of mine reached out to me and goes, you should teach men how to date. And I'm like, what? He's like, well, here's the thing. No one can ever question you on it. You're a female. I'm like, you're right. Right?
That's interesting.
No one questions me on it because I'm a female. And at the same time, when I used to travel, I traveled full time, 50 weeks out of the year with all men. So I got to hear all y'all's stuff, okay? The locker room talk, I heard it all, you know what I mean? And so sometimes they would ask me, questions like, I'm dating this girl, like, here's what she said, what do I do? And I would tell them, and it always worked out. They're like, man, you rock, man, it was awesome weekend, man, she rocked. So I just would do that automatically, and so it fit for me. I'm like, that makes sense. And so when I started doing that, no one ever questioned, oh, well, you were in real estate, now you're this. Like, you're a female. I want to understand you. So yeah, how can you help me? So it was an automatic credibility, which was fun.
That is incredibly interesting. What is it about entrepreneurship? You've had different businesses.
Yeah.
You're an author, which also is obviously empowering in the sense that you're telling your story, how you want to tell it. What is it about entrepreneurship and being your own boss that is so appealing to you?
Oh, freedom. I mean, my biggest value in life is freedom. The moment I feel constraint, like and I went back. Just to be honest, I went back 2010, something like that. I went back to corporate America, mainly because I was like, oh man, I should go back, blah blah blah. So I went back. I lasted 90 days. I was like, okay, I'm really done now. Sometimes you have to go back to the old boyfriend or old girlfriend. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm really done. That's kind of what was my experience, like going back to the old boyfriend. Like, I thought I liked you, I thought I missed you, but nah, I didn't. So I went back to corporate America for 90 days, and I remember when my quote unquote boss was like, you're not supposed to ask me those questions because you're like, this is your role, and like that's my role, and this is the chain of command, all this, rules and regulations. I'm not allowed to think this way. I'm not allowed to ask these questions. I'm like, what in the heck? So to me, that was my big light bulb, because as an entrepreneur, God, I'm constantly dealing with podcast editing. Then I'm dealing with WordPress, and then I'm dealing with, the sales part. And then there's never a piece I'm not dealing with on some level. From tech to not tech to communication to all the bills being paid. I mean, yes, can you outsource some of that and have bookkeepers and whatnot? But you still have to manage all that. You still have to think that way strategically on all levels. There's not one piece you have to completely let go. You might hire someone, but you still have to manage that person. So I guess I'm better at managing different aspects of the business versus going down one tiny little road. That doesn't really work for me. So freedom is freedom. My number one value is freedom. That's why I can hear it in other people,
There's no doubt about it. And I think, I never thought about entrepreneurship purely as, you always think, yes, you want to be free and you want to be self-sufficient and all those kind of things. And you want to, I always thought of it as, I enjoy going after what I like to do. And
that gives you freedom.
Right, and that gives you freedom. That's exactly right.
That gives you the experience of freedom. You probably never consciously said, this gives me, but if you look at the real emotion behind a lot of things in life and why we do a lot of things, little kids, if you look at kids, all they want to do is free. They want to be free, and they wake up being free, and then our whole life as adults, we constantly do all this stuff in our life to go back to being a 5-year-old being free, the experience of being free when we're 5. So, that's what it's all about. I find that true entrepreneurs that are what I call, that's who they are, the innateness, not something they fell into. It's who they are. For me, it's who I am. My number one value is freedom, and that holds in all my areas of my relationships and everything in life. Right. So
that's amazing, and I love how you articulate that so directly. As well, in your southern way, southern charm, but directly at the same time.
Thank you.
I think I want to kind of end it on that, because I think your finishing point is so important on freedom. Where can people find you, Twitter, website wise, and if they want to talk to you further, schedule time with you for some of your coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. HeatherHavenwood.com. In the upper right-hand corner, it says Work with Heather. Click on that, and then it'll take me to my calendar and set up a time to have a conversation, see how I can help you in your business or businesses. I like working with the teams of the business versus just the CEOs. Sometimes I work with the CEOs, sometimes I work with the team. It depends. Like right now, later on today, I'm working with the CEO and one of his team members, how they can come together and creating the sales process, right? So just to give you an idea. So I'd love to work with you, HeatherHavenwood.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Havenwood, as well as Facebook. I'm really active now on Twitter. So it's not my new thing, which is really strange. I've been on Twitter since 2007. All of a sudden, I'm like, Miss Twitter. But I don't know why.
I think you'll find Twitter. Well, I was involved in Twitter right in the beginning, and
yeah, me too.
Built a huge following, so focused on that. Really, originally for my business, but now obviously with everything I'm doing, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing. I guess in 50 minutes, a small part of your success, but I think some really, really amazing points, and for everyone to take away. If you want to be free, you have to figure out the ways that can get you to do that, and I think that is the number one point on it. Thanks so much for coming on today in the Success for Life podcast.
Thank you, David.
All right, have a great day. Once again, before you go, thanks again for being on the Success for Life podcast with me, David Schuman. Please go to iTunes and give us any comments that will help us continue to improve this podcast. You could also hit me up at NUC Football on Twitter, and I'll be glad to talk to you further, find new guests. If you have any suggestions or questions, please hit me up there at any time. Until the next episode for the Success for Life podcast, I'm David Schuman.